Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm going to give everyone another minute to go ahead and sign on. Something we always like to ask, if you want to share in the chat where you're calling in from. It's always fun to see where everyone's at in the world. We get people from all over the US, sometimes around the world. So if you want to drop in the chat where you're calling in from, we'd love to hear it. I am from Colorado today. I say today because I am moving around in an RV. You might have heard that in a past webinar. Hi, Trey.
Sorry, I had to figure out my password.
All good. And then if you guys want to share where you're calling in from, we always love to do that at the beginning of sessions. All right, and while we're giving everyone another minute, we actually have a poll to start us off. I'll go ahead and share that. So the question is going to be, what is your team's work environment like? And this will come up throughout the session. Your options are full team in person, fully remote, some in person, some remote, or hybrid, and then fully hybrid. Or other, whatever other means, you can share it in the chat if you want. Give you guys a few minutes to fill this out. Another minute. I like your shirt, Trey. Cool.
You have no idea how long I thought about what shirt am I going to wear.
What to wear? It's always the question. All right. And then Aton, and on our end, he can share the results so we can see what everyone's got going on. Okay. So mostly hybrid and more so remote than in person. So that'll be interesting with some of these conversations about how to tackle those sorts of environments. All right, so I'll close that down. And then let's go ahead and get into it. We'll probably have a few more people trickling in, but we can get started. I've really been looking forward to this topic about building strong agency culture and prioritizing wellness in the workplace. I'm very passionate about this. It's the only way that I've been able to live in an RV for almost a year now and have a full-time job. So you might hear more about that as we go. But I credit all of that to our team's culture and the way we're able to communicate. So without further ado, we'll get into some introductions and learn more about our awesome guests we have today. So I'm Sam, if I haven't met you. I'm the head of content at Propel, and I've been part of this team for about a year and a half. And I have had a few strategic communications roles across PR, cybersecurity, messaging, and all sorts of things. We also have joining us Trey Ditto. He is a Propel customer, side note, so we're really lucky to help support his team with Propel. He's a seasoned PR pro, has been running his agency for over 10 years now, and started his career on the journalist side of things, actually, as a newsman at Associated Press. And that gave him the inside understanding of how the media works, bringing him to do communications for a governor, US congressman, US secretary of education, and countless domestic and international heads of state. So now he has his own agency after working in a few of the top PR firms in New York City. And here we are today. Welcome, Trey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
And then also we have Mark Mohammadpour. And I actually met Mark earlier this year at the PRSA conference in Arizona, where he was also speaking about wellness and agency culture. And I was immediately sold. He is the owner and chief well-being officer of Chasing the Sun. And In this role, he helps business leaders who want to lead healthier lives learn how to prioritize their well-being so they can shine in the family room and the boardroom. So agencies and in-house communications, HR, and wellness teams hire Mark to help them design their programs. Also a seasoned PR pro, he is a former executive from Edelman and Weber Shandwick. So thank you so much for joining us as well, Mark.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we will dive right into it. The agenda today, we'll do a little bit of a background with Propel and then get into the presentation, everything you guys are excited to hear about. At the end, we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. And if there's anything that sticks out throughout the session about your favorite parts or key takeaways, you can tweet with hashtag Propel Live with any of your big aha moments. So getting into a little background of Propel, if you're not familiar, Propel was founded in 2019 on a mission to democratize and make PR technology accessible for the masses. We're reimagining earned media with first-of-a-kind features like pitching preferences for each journalist that you try to contact. We have teams in Tel Aviv, New York, London, and Miami, and you can learn a little bit more here. And then getting into the good stuff. So we're going to start off by going over some of the challenges of PR agency culture today. And I actually grabbed this image from Spin Sucks. It was one of Ginny's articles where she got into kind of what people think PR is and means compared to what PR professionals actually end up doing. So as we can see, there's a huge disconnect going on. I wanted to invite both of our guests to weigh in on this. It seems like there are so many expectations that are often unspoken of PR people and just kind of swept under and, you know, assumed we'll be doing. And then it's grouped as media relations. So how do you think this ends up impacting agency culture?
Mark, you want to go first? You worked at the big PR firms, so I feel like you've got a lot of good stuff.
Well, I think in preparation you had a lot, but I think there's a lot. As we look at this middle wheel, it's absolutely correct, and I think the added layer onto this is the relationships that we build within our organizations. One of the things that I chat about with, especially with college students and new professionals, is they'll come to me, and if we have an interview, an informational interview, they hear from college professors, they hear from other people say, "Oh, start on the agency side. You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to do all this stuff in the middle in the middle wheel." What I urge them to think about is what the opportunities are working in-house. Now, there are a lot of differences, obviously, working in-house versus agency, but there's a lot that agency teams, individuals are shielded from when you're not engaging day in, day in-house. And that is a lot to do with a lot of behind the scenes discussions and why business decisions are made, and other things that might impact how the communication is made between the in-house lead and the agency team. And so I think the opportunity to make sure that we're understanding how relationships are built within an organization is ultimately impacting how decisions are made, and the opportunities for agencies and agency teams to have that in mind. And that's everything from understanding the business dynamics of an organization to having empathy with our contacts that might be in back-to-back meetings for 8 hours, trying to talk to executives and try to help them understand why it's important to go through a particular strategy is really important. So I'll pause there and I'll turn it over to Trey to layer onto that.
Yeah, thanks. And so everyone knows that. I talk to candidates all the time. I've worked at all these PR firms, and they all kind of say the same thing. So the model is broken, and we know this because there's high turnover on the employee side. If you work at a PR firm for more than 2 years, people are amazed. And a lot of companies, there's high turnover on the client side. So clients not sticking around, employees not sticking around, that in any company, that would be broken. What needs to change? The good thing about like where we're at in the world is that employees have a voice now. When I was growing up, I was never asked, what do you need? I was never like given an opportunity to talk about how the company could change. And that's just, it's different now. And for people, like Mark said, getting into PR, the best way to start understanding that is in the interview process. Like the interview process is all about like work. It's like, oh, well, what do you do? What skills do you have? Do you know these industries? And talked about before is like the candidates start with, well, like, what are you going to do for me? The interview is two ways. And it's like, who's going to grow me? Like, talk to me more about your culture. How do you approach wellness and mentorship? Am I able to try different industries and different things that I want to learn? We sometimes get too fascinated with like the words like Edelman and these big words, like I'm going to go work for Edelman. But you need to look at really more who's going to grow me, who's going to like, how are people going to take care of me at a PR firm? Because then that's where change starts, because it forces PR firms to start thinking about, man, I guess we should start doing these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really valuable. I'm sure just framing things differently to candidates as far as what are you looking for? What do we have going on? Where can you align? That seems like such an important starting point.
So it goes both ways. I know Mark does a lot working with companies on culture and wellness, and that's great. So that's companies, PR firms, and PR leaders doing the right thing, but it has to go both ways. There's one thing we've learned in the last 5 years is that when a large or even a small group of people want something, they can get it. Whether that's like cancel culture thing or bringing back the McRib, like a small group of people can get what they want, and so it has to go both ways, which is people at a company from the AAE on up need to voice what their needs are. What do we really need? Because a company is a business, and they're going to run it as a business. That's why it's human resources, not human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also a good point. And I think that's been really interesting as we see this whole kind of employee market where a lot of things are very focused on almost like benefit wars and like companies doing whatever they can to retain. And it sounds like it's so much more than that. But I'll bring us into the next slide where we'll actually, oh, sorry, Mark, what was that?
Oh, please go ahead. I'll share more later.
We can keep talking on that slide probably the whole time. So.
Probably each of these slides, honestly. But this will lead us really nicely into our next topic, which is the secret to actually being able to grow and maintain a team despite any of the latest economic uncertainty, shifting job markets, and all the rest. So here, this is actually from September 2021, but it's a lot of the same topics. It's what are we going to do about, agencies not being able to retain, and how can this change? And the key points here were to embrace technology more, lead with clarity, and onboard sufficiently and establish trust. So now that flash forward, we're here today, how do you guys feel this has shifted, or is it the exact same? What's most important right now?
From my perspective, the thing that I'm talking to companies about is we have to have this mindset shift of, before the pandemic, an agency would primarily focus on marketing itself against other agencies for prospective clients. And yes, in job descriptions and on the website, it would talk a little bit about culture and work-life balance and its values and things like that. But now there was this kind of shock, obviously, that happened in the pandemic in so many ways, as it related to agencies marketing themselves. It's taking, there needs to be a revolution here. It's not just an evolution. There needs to be a dramatic change in how agencies market themselves, not just to prospective clients, but to prospective employees. And Trey mentioned the interview process, and that's absolutely right. It starts on a website. It starts on all your social media. It starts with the job description. It starts with the recruiter, the hiring manager, the team, and really outlining what it's going to be like to work in this company day in and day out. And that's everything from setting boundaries to how we're taking our time off, to how you can manage your finances. We have to think bigger picture here about employee well-being as part of the overall employee experience. And that has to be discussed not just to your existing employees, but to prospective employees. The other part of this is that as we see more clients focus on this as well, they're going to want to partner with agencies that have similar values. Because if I'm a client and I hire an agency, I want to make sure that, yes, the business results are there, but a lot of that's going to stem from having a cohesive team that has little turnover. And that's something I took a lot of pride in my time at Weber Shamrock and Edelman, is having stability in my teams. And that to me is what helps drive ultimately success for the clients. And so if I'm a client, I want to make sure that there's a stable agency team that has its values and that it works to make sure that it's designing a well-being program that is getting, not only getting the best out of its team, but doing so in a way that is respectful of their time and their professionalism and everything that kind of ladders up to that. So we're seeing a real redefinition of this, and I look forward to seeing how agencies continue to market themselves, not just against prospective clients, but against employees, because it's not going to change.
Yeah. Is it harder to find talent? The answer is no. There are people that are always wondering, is the grass greener somewhere else? And maybe before we kind of hit this potential recession, they were lured by more money. The times were good, and people were throwing a lot of money at PR folks to change agencies. It's also easier to find talent if you're kind of like what Mark was saying, if you're actually, if you have real values and you're actually expressing them online. And I say this with total humility, is that on a regular basis, I'm on LinkedIn writing about, talking about like how agencies can do better and how we lead at Ditto as a people first and company that prioritizes employee wellness and happiness. And I talk about it a lot. And I'd say 95% of the candidates that come to Ditto and end up working here, they say it because they're like, I looked at Trey's LinkedIn and I see what he's saying, and that's what I want. I say that with total humility, just me posted on LinkedIn. And I always say I'm just a simple boy from Texas who's wearing a vintage Moreau t-shirt, but it's a little fancy there. But like, if you as an agency, or if you as a leader on this call at a PR firm, if you're on LinkedIn talking about what you believe in, as it relates to how you treat employees, people will be attracted to that. Retaining talent is definitely gotten harder because some PR firms, some companies, they're doing the best they can. You see all these stories, all the benefits and all the PTO and the wellness days and all that. Like a lot of people, they're doing the best they can. But we haven't really figured out a sustainable way to implement work. We're still at home, we're still disconnected. We're still on Zoom. Maybe we're going into the office and we're wondering why I could have done this all on Zoom and I'm just being distracted by all these people talking to me now. The retention of talent in a hybrid workforce is still something that hasn't been solved. I can say though that this idea that like if you give people more money they'll stay, that's just not true. People, and I can say it firsthand, people who ask for more money and you give it to them, it's a stopgap measure. They just want more money. But like if you get more money and you still don't believe in the company and the clients and the people you work with, like you're going to leave. So and you can have all the benefits in the world, but if you don't have the same value, if the values of the employee aren't the same as the values of the company, one circle, they're going to leave eventually. And I know we talk about onboarding here. Onboarding is the first step. I still can't believe that like PR firms don't put enough attention into onboarding new employees. I talk to candidates all the time and they're like, yeah, I showed up and somebody like sent me an email with like 5 bullets of who my clients are and like where they're at. And that was my onboarding. There's some study out there recently that in the first 90 days of a new employer are the most important. It will decide how long they stay. So the idea that putting more time in the upfront on an employee will actually benefit you in the long run.
I think the other thing, Sam, and definitely want to hear your thoughts at Propel is, I completely agree with Trey as far as it's a little bit easy, it's still easy to find and talent. That's because of the pandemic, we've realized that we can work virtually. And so all agencies have had to evolve thinking about how they're going to be working together. We just saw the poll and diversity of how we are working together. And again, that's not going to change. How agencies are going to be looking at this going forward is be able to say, okay, we need an SAE who has I'm just making this up. We need an SAE who has cybersecurity, B2B cybersecurity experience. And before, we might have to look at a pool of candidates in the Bay Area or Austin or somewhere else. And now we can say, oh my gosh, there's someone in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they have that talent. They want to live there and be able to say, okay, we can attract that. You couldn't do that. You could do that 5 or 10 years ago. The technology was there. Was our society, was this industry ready for that? There are a lot of firms that were. But now we are seeing that more as a norm. So the opportunity is going to be there. And again, back to how agencies want to market themselves, this is the opportunity. But it does come to how you're going to market yourself. And there are going to be some firms, and I have total respect for them, that want their people in the office all the time. And that's fine. That's up to the company. Just make sure that's clear before you're going through the hiring process. Make sure that's clear in the job description. So I just wanted to piggyback off of what Trey said, but Sam, definitely want to hear your thoughts being at Propel and the opportunities that you and your team have as well, because you're living and breathing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree with that enough. Actually, a coworker of mine travels in this RV with me, and yet both of our managers live in Tel Aviv, Israel. So we're 10 hours apart from our leaders most of the time in the company, and just figuring out these expectations and being able to set up our framework in a way that is actually doable, which it kind of sounds crazy upon first glance. It matters so much to iron out everything on this side, or else it would be impossible. You couldn't be starting your workday as your manager like goes to sleep. But we've really been able to do that, and we're so lucky to be able to do that. This next section is all about what we've just gotten into, which is how it seems like expectations and transparency are really at the heart of retention, and making sure people get there and get what they expect on both the business side and the employee side. So I wanted to talk more about this. For one, I know, Trey, you just really, to a very extreme level, shared salary transparency, culture, values, everything of that sort. How has that been going? And have you had a good response to that?
Yeah, I believe in like total, transparency at our company. That's transparency with the clients. We share the contracts with our employees, how much they're paying us. We lay out like like the roles and responsibility, everything is very transparent. Here's what I'm supposed to be doing in this job. And the trust part, again, it starts in the interview process. I don't know how many candidates I've talked to who said, yeah, I'm working at this PR firm, and I got there and this isn't what I thought it was. I didn't realize that this was the work. And so we go through an exhaustive number of steps with a candidate to make sure they're as educated as possible about what they'll be doing here, the clients they'll be working with, the status of those accounts. And then at some point, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to like give it all away for free, because really that's my goal here, is like, I want other people to see what we're doing and say, hey, maybe we could do that where we work. And I want employees at Ditto, like, they're not going to stay here forever. That's fine by me. I want people to learn, like, hey, this is how you treat people. This is what good work looks like. This is what a real client, like PR person relationship looks like. And they go to the next job and like pay that forward and teach other people the positive things too. And so like, if you go to our website, there's a section called Playbook at the top, and we lay out everything. We lay out salaries. We lay out how much you can get in a raise. We lay out how you get promoted and when. We lay out how we work, when we don't do meetings. It's just like everything that's involved with working at Ditto, from benefits to account expectations to the actual work we do. We laid it all out because that's what people want to know. They want to know, like, well, what am I gonna, like, it's all the uncertainty. Oh, who are my clients going to be? Or when am I going to get a raise? How much is that bonus going to be? Like, there's so much uncertainty, and it creates unhealthy relationships between the PR firm and the employee.
Right, which that really resonates with me. Actually, when I met Mark, he told me this story about when that doesn't happen. I think it was one of your first agency experiences or something of that sort, but basically the expectations were not clear at all. And for no reason other than that, it really set up like a pretty negative work environment for you. Do you remember what you were telling me with that? Yeah,
absolutely. Before I get into that, I just want to reiterate what Trey is saying and really appreciate that. And the more that we can treat our teams, no matter what stage they're at and their tenure as professionals, as adults, the better. So the more public we can be about the status of financials and the relationships with the clients and things like that. Let's treat our people like adults. And I've heard the contrarian view. Well, we don't want to scare our teams. We don't want them to make them worry. And I think the more that we can respect them as like partners and as trusted advisors and as business leaders, the better. Yes, finances can be scary, and they are, but that's the reality. And I think being able to give people that information really shows a trusting and transparent company. So Trey, I appreciate that you sharing that. Back to what you were saying, Sam, I think, one of the things that happens when we join companies, whether it's a PR firm or we're at a firm and we're joining a new account team. And I know that this webinar and Propel's clients run the scale from small agencies up to the multi-level global, is that you are every account team is going to have a different experience. And one of the things that I experienced in my career were expectations from somebody who might be running a global account or a big account on, for instance, when to respond to a client email, or when to take paid time off, or why meetings need to be scheduled. And none of these conversations happened before I joined the team. None of these conversations happened as I was starting on the account team. They happened sort of retro, in response to something that I did, and say, "Oh, Mark, we expect our executives to check email once every weekend." And I understand the professional level why they shared that, but they didn't communicate that to me. And, it drives me a little crazy. And so I really want to push teams to design what I'm calling a team charter, which is a one-page document that talks about what are the expectations across your business. And that can be enterprise-wide for your firm. But really, I think this is an opportunity from a team standpoint and how you're going to operate. And that's everything from the communication channels they're going to focus in on, because we can't be on 17 channels, how we're going to define priorities and communicate across their team what those look like, to taking time off and what's the process, how are we operationalizing it, because this is well, I say it's an American societal issue, but I think this is a broader global issue, is that we're not taking our paid time off. And there are a lot of reasons behind that. Meetings, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, I think, like why meetings need to be scheduled in the first place. And other factors, like what are our core working hours, right? Because we have to also respect the fact that there are people that we're working with who are parents, who are taking care of their own parents, and other factors that are impacting our ability to work a traditional 8-to-5 job. But there should be some flexibility in there. It's just making sure that we have that documented. And that's a conversation, Sam, that should be happening across your team. It can be led by the leader, but it should be inclusive of everyone on that team. And it's a fascinating dialogue. I've had the opportunity to host several of them with agencies, and out of that comes a transparent approach of how we're working together. And it's helped to, retain and grow those teams.
And it's never too late, and it's never too early to do this. And bringing in someone like Mark is just it's just signal to employees that they care about this. Like, instead of trying, I mean, we did it on our own, and I've got a gray beard as a result. But like bringing in someone else to walk your teams through this, it shows that you care, and it also lets the expert do what they're good at. So then if they have questions or issues, instead of the PR person, like the PR leader, executive answering them, which will always be biased. It'll always be biased towards the company. Having Mark come in and give unbiased expert opinion is like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I love that.
I appreciate that, Trey. Part of that also is vulnerability, right? And we want to see leaders be vulnerable and say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to trust people, whether that's an outside person or your own employees themselves, to be able to say, I have an idea and I have a solution, because I think that's what makes great leaders, to be able to say, I don't have all the answers. That's a very vulnerable thing, but it actually is a strength of ours in order to do that. And these are very vulnerable discussions that we're having, and it's about our business. And the more that we can respect those that we work with, I think the better we are as leaders, and opportunity is going to come from that. So appreciate that, Trey.
Definitely. And just showing your people that you're investing in them, like beyond just your own time. It's like such a step further. It's really great. Let's get into these work environments a little bit more. So this is kind of why I gauged that at the beginning with the poll, just to see where everyone's at and what's relevant to you. But as we all know, we have remote work kind of all over the place to different extents at different agencies. And especially in communications, I think a lot of people have seen that this is particularly an industry where you can work remote and you don't need to be sitting at the office to manage your accounts as much as some other industries. So it's definitely been hugely impactful, and sometimes in bad ways too. So this is where we get into problems with meetings, expectations a little bit more. How to maximize time when you have some people at the office every day, some people that never come in, all those different variations all in one often. So I would be curious to hear how you guys think you could maximize a workday across maybe remote, in-person, hybrid conditions, and not make people feel burnt out. I know isolation and mistrust, misuse of time, these are all concerns that I think agency leaders are thinking about.
Trey, go for it.
I'll say first of all that the choice is yours. You have choices to improve your workday. Whether or not you take them, it's up to you. It starts off with, people say work-life balance. There's never been work-life balance. The fact that we've had to say work-life balance, there isn't work-life balance. Like we're putting the same words in the same sentence. It's work-life separation. First of all, I'm gonna give tips. First thing is wake up in the morning and don't check your email. Wake up in the morning. I always tell my employees, do 3 things before you check your email. Because the second you start getting into work mode, it's hard for your brain to separate that again. You're thinking about work now, no matter what you're doing. So set that separation at the beginning of your day. I talk about like the mindful commute, which is we used to commute to work, and whether we realize it or not, we got to listen to music, or a podcast, or just sit on the train and stare at people. But we got that time to ourselves, and we lost that 30 to 45 minutes. Regain that 30 to 45 minutes. It's yours. And do something with it. Just don't do work. For us at Ditto, again, we had to take extreme measures. And I've talked to people who've tried to do this at their company, and the bosses shot it down. Is the first thing we did was we canceled all of our meetings. We tried to dial them back some, and actually we ended up having more meetings. So we canceled all of our meetings. And then as a result, people only scheduled the meetings that were important, and we scheduled them in the afternoon, because when it comes to productivity, enjoy your workspace, people are their best in the mornings for the most part. They wake up, they go to the gym, whatever, they have some coffee, and by 9:30, they're ready to go. At your best, you should be doing your best work. You shouldn't be stuck in meetings that could be reserved for the afternoon. So one of those things is try to put your meetings in the afternoon more. And then I know Axios read a story about this yesterday, is if you are making your employees come back to the office, whether it's once a week or twice a week or full time, we have to recreate what an office used to look like. Because if we're all so used to just sitting on Zoom meetings. And so that means for PR, going to get drinks with reporters, right? Doing a brainstorm, pulling up as an account team, going to an event together, going to happy hour, going to lunch. There were all these things that we did that made it actually kind of enjoyable to go to work, in 2019 and earlier. And if we, whether that's an executive or all the way on down, if we don't start scheduling those things when we're into work, we're going to be sitting at the office doing Zoom meetings, and we're going to think, I could have done this all at home.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just kidding about this header. If anyone cringed, you should have. Don't always schedule a meeting is what we're hearing. And Mark also has shared a lot about this, even as far as what could be a video meeting or not, when people are so tired of meetings in the first place. Do you want to comment on the fatigue that can happen there?
Yeah, thank you. So there's data from Microsoft. A couple years ago, they looked at brain activity of those who have been in back-to-back video calls without breaks, and the more that you are in video calls back to back, more that your stress and anxiety goes through the roof. And if you take a step back and think about why, it's just there's so many factors. There's kind of the delay response. We don't exactly see how people are responding real time. I'm looking straight at a camera lens here that's on top of my monitor. And so for me, it's a challenge to be able to establish rapport, because I have to assume that everyone is going to be okay with what I'm saying. It's different than being in a room. And so it's just also hard on our eyes. It's very straining on our eyes, and we've defaulted to this. And I want, like what Trey was saying, is doing an audit of your meetings and say, what are the ones we absolutely have to have on video? What are the ones that we can be on audio? And then what are the ones that we can be away from our desk and actually do walk and talks? Because we've defaulted to these video calls, we have to sort of break away from that. So that's something that I talk to teams about, is doing an audit. We realize that we can't cut out all of our meetings, but I think there's an opportunity to do so. And I think related to that is not only the opportunity within our agency teams to examine this, but as we think about the relationship with our client, when we're onboarding with them as part of that process and putting some structure down, what can we do to help manage those meetings and those engagements? Because as much of the challenge that PR agency side folks have, the same is true on the client side. Now, it's important, obviously, for video to be able to build rapport. You see that nonverbal communication, that's obviously 90% of all communication. But if we can go into this saying, okay, we're not going to have every call on video, and here's why, I think that will really impact things. And just to echo what what Trey was saying earlier, that the opportunity to really define what an in-office work style like is different than at home is going to be really key. And it's almost like we have to have two different strategies on what that looks like, whether that's going to events, meeting with reporters, ideation, brainstorms, and then at home, it's kind of your sit down and your focus on your own work. And the more that we can hone in on those strategies and talk about how we're working differently, the better that you can structure and hopefully reduce burnout a bit, because you're not trying to do the exact same thing every day, regardless of whether in your office or at home, because it gets to be too much, not only from a mental standpoint, but as Trey mentioned, like, what's the point? Why are we coming into the office in the first place?
Right. And I hear that personally a lot, even from friends at other companies. Like, I went in the office today, I didn't talk to a single person, and I don't know why I even did it. And it can just be frustrating. And it can all come down to just having a better idea of when you're working together, when you're not, and all of that. All right, last topic here. Trey, don't kill me, taking work-life balance seriously. So we'll actually get into, I pulled an image from Severance for this, if anyone's seen it. It is about completely separating work and home life surgically in the sci-fi TV show. So I think the question here is, for one, is it even possible, or should we be separating work and home life, or trying to at least?
Yeah, it's and like what Mark does too is like bringing someone like him in to have these conversations about, okay, what does work-life balance look like? Let's just establish what we think it is, and then we can set these principles that we can all kind of try to live by, right? I won't check my email when I first wake up, and after a certain time, I will log off, and that gets into, Mark talked about the PTO thing as well. Like work-life balance extends beyond like 9 to 5. It's also like, when I go on vacation, I will unplug. I can believe it, but like candidates I talk to are like, so tell me about PTO. So do I have to work while I'm on vacation? And we utterly banned any work while someone is on vacation. And I always joke, if I see you on Slack or responding to an email, like, I will change your passwords. And it's because like people are so worried. This is about that conversation. People are so worried that like, well, like, how will the work get done? Or what if they need me? And I always joke, like, you're not as important as you think you are. Good teams will survive, So, and that's what happens is our people, most of them delete Slack and Gmail when they go on vacation, and they come back, and guess what they realize? Things moved on. Like we got the work done. And so I think just knowing that it's okay to log off. It's okay to go on vacation. It's okay to go on vacation and not check your email. I'm the CEO and I don't check my email when I go on vacation. There's very little going on that would be such an urgent thing that I would have to like get on a phone call and respond to something. It's because I have great teams. People can do most of my job while I'm gone.
Yeah, here. I think it needs to be defined by the agency, and it needs to be defined by the account team. If your primary work is related to crisis comms, the way that you have to approach it is going to be very different than, say, you're in consumer tech. Right? If you're in consumer tech, you typically know the times of the year that are going to be busy, right? And so and everything in between, healthcare, financial communications, everything in between, they're going to have their own cycles and understanding what that looks like. I think the opportunity for agencies is to examine well-being from 3 areas. One is at the executive level, and making sure that they're taking care of themselves and that they're setting a standard. It's at the new professional level, who are going to have different stresses than the executive, right? And that's going to be everything from mental and financial to social, their career well-being, and everything in between. But then there's that middle part. So if you're an SAE, an AS, an account director, and you're growing into this role where you used to be a tactician and now you're delegating, and you're growing as an adult and as a person, you have all these other things that are going on. It's a challenge to figure out how you're going to be able to delegate and let go of some of those things. And that impacts your perceived ability to take time off, because what's happened, as Trey mentioned, is that our worth, our value is different. It's not less, it's different, and it's defined differently. And so my challenge for agencies is to make sure that we're installing programming and leadership training for these new managers to understand what needs to be done so you can empower your teams to succeed, so that you're not up 18 hours a day overworking and doing stuff because you have trust in your team to do it. Now, I understand, recognize that sometimes because you're taking a new role that you're having to hire and backfill and all this stuff, and that again comes back to then managing up and talking to your executives and talking about what priorities are important and making sure that you're not overworking because you're doing things that don't need to be done, that aren't mission critical. And I think all of this impacts our ability to balance however we want to define that within our organization.
I think PR people need to take a minute to ask themselves, like, what makes me valuable? Yep. Because I started with the interview process. I don't know. I haven't had a single person I've ever interviewed that said, and I'm available 24/7 on weekends and vacation. I don't even know that's a line item in a job description. So I don't know why we think that it's valuable that we work late and we work on vacation. It's not. What's valuable is being good at your job, because then you shouldn't have to work on vacation. But there's no scenario where, like, you take vacation or you log off at 6 o'clock when your work is done, and someone's like, man, they're just not that valuable to the company, and we may need to replace them. I've never heard of someone being replaced for going on vacation. I've never heard of someone being replaced for doing good work and logging off at 6.
Yep. And burning yourself out is going to make everyone miserable. So you might only just cause damage in that case.
And for like the people on this call, like I read this data point a couple of weeks ago. It's and I kind of like spun a little. The more PTO people take, the more productive they are and the longer they stay. Yet we're scared to take PTO because we're like, I don't know, like the work, right? Like what my boss think. Like as the boss, you should know that when your people take PTO, they are better, they're more productive, and they stay longer. So you're actually being valuable. You're actually being valuable by going on vacation and unplugging.
Everyone take note of that. Do yourself a favor, do everyone a favor. All right, we'll wrap it up here. A few last things. If you haven't tried Propel, we have a new free version. So we just wanted to share about that for anyone who might want to try it. You can easily make an account, and what that looks like, if you're not familiar, we have a bunch of different tools that can help you be more productive, as we're talking about, and make your life easier as a PR pro. So check it out if you haven't already. Trey has also offered, just from this call, to have you reach out to him with any further questions or curiosities you have about how he's made all of this happen at his agency, and any tips you want. He's happy to reveal the secrets. So Trey, if there's a way you'd want people to reach out to, you can share some contact info in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll say too, by the way, my goal, how do you do that, Trey? How did you do that? Like what did you do to get that done? My goal, I give it all the way. I had a candidate interview me once, and I gave him our whole new business questionnaire thing. Because if he does that, he'll service his clients better, and PR will be better. The PR industry will be better.
Absolutely.
And I'll say too, by the way, Propel, we were an early customer for Propel. And I remember walking into that first meeting, it was a Zach, and within minutes, I was like, oh my God, this is the first piece of technology that actually makes PR better. And we've been like I walked out of the meeting. I was like, we'll take it, and walked out. It's like 5-minute meeting. And I've always been a big proponent of Propel. It's the first technology I've ever seen in PR that actually makes our job easier and better. And that's good for the employees, and that's good for the reporter.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we're so lucky to have Ditto PR on our team at Propel. Like Trey mentioned, they were literally one of our first customers ever. I don't know if we even, I mean, we had a handful at the time. And so it's been amazing working with you guys. So thank you. And then Mark, of course, you've learned a little bit about what he does at Chasing the Sun, offering different well-being services for employees. He can help you design your own company program, host different workshops. He's an amazing speaker at all kinds of conferences and events. So also feel free to reach out to him. And then wrapping everything up, if you have any questions, you can share them now. We have a few from throughout that I'll take a look at. So a couple questions just to wrap it up. Someone asked, what are some of the benefits you're starting to see agencies offer today that you haven't seen in the past? That's a good one.
Ooh, boy. Well, we use Holistically. I'll throw them out there, and they're great for like ClassPass and some grocery delivery thing. They got a lot of really cool things. We've had unlimited PTO since the beginning, but we also have mandatory PTO. So we monitor people's PTO and make sure that you take it every quarter. I think what are the benefits? Like we've all read about them, but it has to be part of a bigger thing. I could have great healthcare. I could have like ClassPass for everybody and free groceries. But like, if you don't believe in the company and you don't enjoy working there and you don't like the client, you're not treated well, you're gonna care about that. I'll say the one thing that we did recently that was like, oh, this is so helpful is we created a travel stipend for everybody. We've been trying to get people fly from LA to New York to Texas, and we've been bringing people together for years during COVID. And at some point I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give everyone a $1,000 travel stipend for the year. And you go meet with employees when you want to. That's been a big hack for me, is just giving people the money to go do it when they want to.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think, and definitely agree with what you're talking about, Trey, as far as thinking about a holistic approach to this. And part of it is communicating. So for my HR friends on the line, and I know that you and your internal communications folks and trying to figure out how to communicate all the benefits is just as important, because awareness can be a big challenge for some agencies. I think the two kind of on top of what Trey was talking about, one is related to therapy. I've heard this a lot, and I'm not just talking about meditation apps. I'm actually talking about support for therapy as far as your healthcare spend. And then the other is related to financial well-being. So this goes beyond support for 401ks and stock options. It's be able to have software and services and financial experts who are available to work with people on designing a financial plan for them going forward. So
yeah. And we use JustWorks, who's also a client, full disclosure. And I will say JustWorks, the benefit side to JustWorks in the wellness and mental health space, I was floored at the things they provide in and out of network on the mental health side. I'm old school. I'm if I got a cold, I go to the doctor. But this was next level benefits on the wellness side, and that has been a huge value add for us using JustWorks.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Another one that came in. How do you recommend managing differences in time zone from different countries to the next, specifically for anything urgent? Say you have people on severely different time zones, but your customers are in a certain place.
Damn, this seems like a great question for you. Not to put you on the spot.
Well, I mean, so at least throughout the US, most of our customer base and our team is in Eastern hours. So if I choose to be in California, I make a point to get up those few hours early and be available when the Eastern team is. But of course, that's not always doable. And we do have some people that we know they're on at certain times. And usually the people that are on different time zones than our customer base are more internally facing, just because it's not realistic to have people up in the middle of the night, at least on our team.
So what do? You like solve your own problem. Like, you know what the problem is? Like, it's like Einstein was like, if you have 60 minutes, think about a problem for 55 minutes and think about the solution for 5 minutes. The problem is I've got a client that has highly demanding things immediately, but I have an employee who's not in the same time zone. Well, you know what the problem is. Like, the solution is pretty simple. Like, you either got to find people in that time zone, or establish that this person who's not in a good time zone as it relates to clients simply can't do stuff when it's needed immediately. We used to have employees, in Israel and in Europe, and they did a lot of early morning work. But we also knew if there was ever some like a crisis or like an immediate thing, we wouldn't use them for that. So, and ideally you would have thought about that before you hired them or before the client, right? Is like, people in bad time zones aren't going to be great for like immediate Eastern to Pacific time work. And also, like, I believe it, like, whatever time zone you're in, is that's what you should be working in. Sorry, Sam, but like, if you're on West Coast, you work West Coast hours. Do not work East Coast hours and West Coast hours. You'll burn yourself out. Work the time zone you're in.
You're here.
It's a good point. I personally just prefer having an earlier work day, just so I can get off and do my thing afterwards. But definitely, I would not do it against my will or to just meet an expectation, or like you said, those would just be explained up front.
You start getting up on your Pacific. I mean, I moved from New York to LA. You start waking up do Eastern time stuff. You start doing New York hours, right? Once, and then it's twice. And next thing you know, you're waking up in the morning, checking your email and knocking out a few things. Like, right. And then all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock and you're like still working. And now you've just done a 10 to 12 hour day. Like, this is not, that should be the exception to the rule.
That's no good. None of that. Okay, we also have another one. How do you recommend implementing time tracking, so billing expectations, without turning to a law firm and working through post-COVID hybrid work conditions? Does JustWorks do that, or do you have
This is about billable hours?
I think so. I'm a little confused about it.
Well, I'm not the right person to answer this question, because we don't do billable hours, and I've always thought that they were ridiculous, because my value was setting up a meeting with 5 other like VPs to build the client. So at a larger PR firm, that's why you're in meetings all day, because that's how you make money. And then they're like, oh, then you do the work at 4. We've always been results focused, so we put our time into the work. And I would rather someone send out a pitch that they wrote in 30 minutes and get 3 interviews than someone spend 5 hours writing multiple pitches, following up, and getting 1 thing. So I'm much more into productivity and getting things done as quickly as possible and as best as possible, not time.
Yeah. I think it's important to get a sense as far as how long this stuff takes, so you have a sense. If it takes someone 8 hours to draft a press release, that might be a little bit of a red flag. It depends on the release, right? But you know, when you probably should take 45 minutes or 90 minutes, I think those are when, you know, it's important to have those certain discussions. And I think part of it is setting those expectations to be able to say, you should be able to get this report done in a certain amount of time, and not to put pressure, but to be able to put context, especially when it comes down to prioritization, and really get a sense of what that looks like. So I think that might not directly answer the question, but I think it's important from that vantage point to get a sense as far along, you know, certain projects are going to take, especially if they haven't done them a lot in the past.
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to take up any more of anyone's time. We'll go ahead and give it a hard stop. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Trey and Mark, for joining. This was so great. I think everyone got a lot of value from both of your experience. If anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to Trey or Mark or myself. My email is here if you have any questions about Propel. Again, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Good job, Sam.